that needs to be brought out, and no one seems to do that.
Taking advantage.
Yeah, now, a bunch of cowards picking on this little 14-year-old girl, this latest thing, and pushing her face into the ground and putting his knees in her back. She sure couldn't hide no weapon. She was in a bikini. And she was clearly a child.
Wow.
And him pulling out guns in that setting with these kids who had just jumped the fence to go into a pool or something, and when did the cops only shoot to kill? You can shoot someone in the arm and disarm them. You can shoot someone in the leg and stop them from running. When did this new thing shoot to kill? In the back, in the heart, but you never hear they're presented like, the cops felt threatened. No, now we're seeing you shoot people in the back. And and we never see the weapons. Almost in every case, there was no weapon, and they're dead. Why are they dead? These are things that have to be dealt with, and we can't passively let this fly. This is patent, blatant racism in our faces that we're going to turn back the hands of time. We're going to stop you from voting if we can, and we're going to take away all of those freedoms from the Supreme Court now. We're going to just tear apart the Voting Rights Act. We're going to, in all these southern states, enact things that will prevent you from voting because you won't have the cards that we say you need for identification. We're going to take women's rights away, close all of their reproductive clinics. This is craziness. In America at large, we cannot just let this happen. I thank God that Hillary has come out of the gate saying this racism has got to go. What are you afraid of?
Right.
It's just, we can't just let this happen because it's ugly.
At all.
And, there's a black man on today with this thing with these teenagers saying, oh, no, it's not race. These kids came from another part of town and jumped their fence and da-da-da-da-da. That has nothing to do with wrestling a 14-year-old girl in a bikini down to the ground, a big, old, strapping white man putting both of his knees in a child's back. That has to do with race. I get so sick of them trying to pose the question that way. And someone's got to learn to say, this has to do with several things, and race is one of the things it has to do with. It's not no either or, it's all of. It has to do with police brutality. It has to do with race. If all the people dying are black and all the ones killing them are white, come on. And that part of me, no matter how old I get, I guess that's still young in me, because even on this phone, I'm ready to go fight right now.
Right. One of my opinions is I very much believe that it all starts up with the home and the upbringing of the child.
Well, that's fine, but the problem is, once they loaded our communities with crack cocaine, they destroyed the black family. And we've got to talk about that's where the destruction started. When they came into the community and just put the crack in every major urban setting, that was the end of mommy and daddy at dinner with kids. When they took the not prayer out of school, but arts and music, and when they start teaching to test rather than teaching kids how to critically think and make decisions and dumbing them down, there's been almost 30 years of that. So to try to think that out of that would come the kinds of things that we knew from black families, it's impossible. They didn't have that. And someone has to bring those things up. We could ride around Harlem, here in L.A., in South Central, in Philly, in Chicago. There were areas that we could ride up to the red light, and they were so brave they could walk right up to our car windows and offer us crack while the red light was on.
Wow.
No cops were trying to stop that. They weren't trying to break that up. It was allowed to proliferate in those communities. There was no such thing as a strawberry when I was a kid in the black community. There was no such thing as a mother sharing tricks with her daughter because everyone was cracked out. That was perpetrated on us as a people. You can't talk about solving this and not look at those years that made the difference between safe black communities with men with jobs, kids with education, people with mortgages, buying homes, raising their kids. That came to a screeching halt once the drugs were poured into community. That movie that Denzel did was about the man in Harlem that ended with, when they couldn't crack the case, and in the end, what did they crack it with? The drugs were coming in from Vietnam in the coffins of soldiers with the government participation.
Wow.
You can't talk about this until you talk about all of that. And to leave that out of the equation is to always have a skewed idea as if, oh, well, in the black community, families just stopped caring about their children and mothers didn't give a damn no more. Fathers just all left the home. Bull crap. That was perpetrated on groups of people. Latins, blacks, those things were laid in our community. Maxine, I remember years ago Maxine Waters said the guys are telling that the CIA and the FBI were partners in bringing crack cocaine into the black community. If you notice, most of the biggest crack dealers all got out of jail.
Wow.
Whether it was the man in Harlem, they talked about him, turning or whatever, but the biggest dealers, whether it was the guy out here in L.A., the guy back home in Baltimore, Little Melvin, all of them went to jail and got out of jail.
Wow.
These are the biggest dealers of heroin in black America. The subordinates are still in jail, but the top dealers, like the man store that Denzel played the role, all of them got out. So they must have known where the bodies were buried, and they must have known the secrets. But it was real clear when all of that just didn't happen from out of nowhere. All of a sudden, you stopped at a red light in our community, and people could just feel so brave they walk right up to your car and do a deal out in the middle of the street.
Wow.
And no police from nowhere came to stop it. Come on. If we're going to talk about solving it, we got to talk about their participation in the destruction of certain urban communities across America. It was allowed to happen. It was not, it just happened. It was allowed to happen. In Baltimore, all of those series that those men wrote about, that was the truth, the corners, and kids being able to just run those corners and run those drugs. And, near the end of the last series, they even tried to experiment where they gave them a section where they would deal the drugs.
Wow.
This was things that was allowed to happen in certain communities, and it destroyed them. And what do we see happening now? They're gentrifying them. The blacks lost the homes. The older people died out. The younger generations that the homes were left to wound up on crack cocaine, lost those properties and homes. They let them go into disrepair. They boarded them up. Now they are remodeling, fixing them up, pricing them too high. When I was last in New York, my niece said, I said, well, there's that lady that, before I left New York years ago, she had just come up to South Carolina and started her restaurant. She was becoming popular. And my niece said, oh, yes, Sylvia, it's a whole block long now, Uncle Carl. And she took me over there, and she went inside to get whatever it was that I wanted. I'm sitting in the car. I'd never seen so many white people walk up down the street in my life. I said, well, here it is here, too. The gentrification is in Philly. It's in Baltimore. It's in New York. It's everywhere. That did not just happen from out of nowhere.
Right.
That was planned, and it took place simultaneously all over urban Black America. And now those communities are being built up, and we can't even afford to move into them. But they were decimated by the sale of crack and the many bodies that were planted in the ground behind killing each other over territory and gang wars, all behind drug deals.
Wow.
That all has to be discussed. If that is, when I started doing the work, let me tell you, it was so hard often not to break down in my office. When kids would say, they would look at me just spellbound because I talk about birthday parties my parents had given me in Baltimore, or surprise birthday parties my mother would give my father every year, and he acted every year like it was a surprise, and how much joy would be in that house. And they would say, Rev, I've never had a Christmas tree. And you could see that sincerely. This is a black kid now, like I used to be a black kid, sitting across from me, telling me he's never had a Christmas tree. One kid told me in foster care, they used to take him to the laundromat in the neighborhood, stand him in the laundromat early in the day, put the vials of crack in one side of his jeans, and the customers knew to come and put the money in the other pocket because he was too young to be arrested and served. Now, can you imagine that?
Oh my, I can't even imagine.
This is, whereas I would have talked about my childhood and talked about learning to ride my two-wheel bicycle for the first time, falling down on my roller skates, my birthday parties, my different. This kid was telling me how he used to be stood in the laundromat in the black community he knew, in this foster care home. They getting a check for having him. Meanwhile, they're cutting crack and cocaine in this house, fixing the valves, standing him in the laundromat for hours on end, and these other grown folk come in, go in one pocket and get the crack and put the pay in the other. That's the childhood he's talking about.
Wow. Sad.
That can't be left out. That was perpetrated. That was purposeful. There are different stories. These kids, you say, well, what about your race? They say, I'm from the system. That's what these black kids are. The system. They're from the system.
Wow.
We can't allow them to not tell this whole story of how it got where it was and how it got like this. We can't allow them to just spin it that they're all gang members and they're all thugs. And no, there's a change that took place in certain parts of America very purposely. You can't leave it out that you stopped and frisked these kids with a joint and gave them long-term sentences because you've privatized the jails across America and you make more money off of them being in a prison cell than you could get from them being in a schoolroom. And so we are way down the totem pole in numbers in America, but we're number one in the prison system. You can't leave that out. You purposely created these laws to put these black men in jail for 20, 30 years. And now you want to turn around and say that they're just unteachable and they're unreachable and they're just off. No, this is perpetrated. Look at the thing today, this prison break that's in the news now. This prison, they say, is majority black in this prison, this high-density prison. But there's 98% white people working in the prison. And 2 Latinos, I think they said. This is, so when people sit up on the news, Yes, and they ask
It's
questions
setting
like,
us
"Do
up
you
for
think?"
failure.
Yeah.